joining us. There we go. We are recording the session. It'll go onto the Knowledge Hub. Croeso noswaith dda. Welcome, evening, everybody. We have got more people signed up, but you know, we're a nice group, so that's fine. I'm Debbie, as some of you, most of you know, and my name's on the screen as well. Just a bit of housekeeping. Very much welcome to keep your cameras on. If you could go on to mute while the speakers are speaking, that would be really helpful. It just keeps out background noise. Feel free to ask any questions through the chat box, or you can actually put your hand up if you want to, if the numbers stay small. That's absolutely fine. This is the small scale crop rotation and crop planning session, which was one that the sector had asked for. So it's brilliant that we've been able to put it on. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So welcome all. We've got two speakers this evening who are very generously sharing their expertise. So thanks very much to my other half, Phil Handley, and also to Graeme Wilson from Slade Farm. So welcome to you both. Phil's going to go first, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, Phil's bit, and then Graeme will take over. But as I say, you're welcome to put questions in the chat box and we can ask them as we go along if you want to. I don't think there's anything else I need to add at this point. So enjoy the session, and we'll have more questions as we go. Thanks. Over to you, Phil.
Okay. Let's just do the. Okay, is that sharing now? Yep. Right. Hello, everybody. What I'm going to do is just briefly run through an Excel spreadsheet system. I can't take full credit for this. This was developed by the Welsh College of Horticulture back in the day. It's a spreadsheet that I've used every single year. You can make this as complicated or as simple as you want, but I found that it plans the whole year for me, and it's something that I can refer to rather than trying to remember what it is we've got to do week by week. So if you can just try and stay with me on my cursor as I talk about each bit. I'm sure some people will have a much better knowledge of Excel spreadsheets than I do, and other people may find it a bit intimidating. We can always arrange for this to be explained better if people want an individual thing on it later on. Right, I'm just going to start with this. I've just put up beetroot on this first of all. As an example, we're growing everything that we can in modules in the garden here. So this first section here is the basic start. And if you look at the part where my cursor is at the moment, that's the first bit of information that you need to research. The thing about this spreadsheet is it really makes you think, and it's a sort of perhaps something that you start looking at in November and December. But it starts to make you think, what are we planting? Did we get the spacing right last year? Did we get the varieties right last year? Did we get the timing right? And you can then go back and think, well, okay, we need to make changes. So that I've got these now going back 12 years. So the first thing is it's the beetroot, taking the figures from one of the websites, 60 centimeters between the rows, 10 centimeters in the rows. That's fairly self-explanatory, and it gives a density. So I'm at this stage thinking, right, particular bolt hardy, and I'm going to do a successional sowing every 4 weeks, starting week 6. Obviously, week 1, this is a horticultural week, so it's week 1 is the 1st of January week. So this spreadsheet is all filled in. So I'm going to decide that I'm going to do 20 meters, square meters of each of that variety for each of those dates. So I'm going to pop that in, and hopefully that has now changed on your screen. So that's 333 beetroot seeds to be sown on each of those weeks. And I'm now going to start to move along the spreadsheet and show you how we fit that in. So we need to decide a couple of other things before we go on from there. One is the week we want to sow, and roughly what the timescale is going to be before those modules are ready to plant. And at that time of year, I know that it takes 4 to 5 weeks for a beetroot seed to properly fill the modules. We're using the module trays with 70 to 80 cells per tray. So you know the sort of size that I mean. Once those modules are holding together, then we can transplant. I know that it's about 10 weeks till they're till they're going to be ready for harvesting from that point. So obviously these are filled in as little equations. So that's going on from the sowing week +5, the harvesting is going on +10. I'm going to move down to the next section on this, and as I say, you can take these or leave these. So we look at propagation in green. So I know that my propagation plan is going to be for week 6, I'm going to have to sow that particular one, week 10, week 14, and I know the numbers. Now this sheet will build up because we're also going to be doing other varieties. So I'm going to go back to that page there. So with the beetroot, I know that I'm also going to be wanting to sow Detroit, Choggia, and some golden. And I will just add these, and this is literally cut and paste. So I can copy that line, I can add it in as another 3, I can paste those in, and I can change that one to be Detroit. So hopefully that has changed for you, okay? And I can then add those in, each one in turn. I'm going to get rid of those just to make the screen a little bit simpler. So I would then end up with a set of lines like that for each of those varieties. So we're going along to the propagation. You can print that section off for the propagation house. What I tend to do is print off the first one. Now, obviously, not everything is sown in modules. So this next section that's in pink, this is the planting one. So we've got the propagation one in green, we've got the planting area. So we know that during those weeks, that is what's actually got to be taken out the glass house and planted. Again, it's going to give you ideas and numbers of what you've got to do. And if you print off that section of the spreadsheet, you've even got the planting width, so when you go into the field. I do tend to sometimes add another figure in here, which is this one here, which is the planting length. Only because if I'm planting something like French beans, which I'm going to run in with a handheld drill, I need to know our beds are 30 meters long, and I want to put in how many runs up and down of the bed do I need to do for those French beans. So the planting length, and you can do that as a straight formula. You know, it's obviously going to be the number of plants per meter to give you the planting length. So I'm going to carry on to the next bit. Harvesting, again, we've now got ideas of what's coming through, and bear in mind that this whole sheet is going to build up. If you're doing a garden like we're doing, where you've got a lot of different crops, you're going to end up with maybe 200 or 300 lines on this page. A lot of it is very, very much cutting and pasting, or copying and pasting. So it's not quite as bad as that sounds. So there's a harvesting section. Now, we've modified this original thing to bring in this lot here, because I was just wanting to do a little bit of maths on it. So this section for the beetroot, we know that the market's starting in week 21, and I'm going to estimate that that particular variety is going to be viable to sell for about 6 weeks. We've got 333 that we've planted. I'm going to just jump over to this green box here, and I'm going to estimate that 75% of what we've sown is viable to sell. Now, that for some things that's going to be high, for other things that might be a bit lower. It's just going to give us an idea. So of that 333, we know 75% is viable. Now, it's going to be sold in bunches, and the unit in a bunch is 4. Therefore, we've got 83 bunches of that particular one to sell. If you come to the last column, we've got to sell 10 bunches of beetroot boltardy in that week in the market. That's per week. And then we've also got 10 of coming through for that one, which might overlap. And we're going to obviously then have the golden, we might have the choggia on whatever ones we do. So it's giving you an idea of how much, when you're trying to plan veg bags or veg boxes, or even market stalls, you know that, okay, we need to put in, we've got 100 bags to do, and we need 100 bunches of beetroot in that week. And so you're now starting to work out how many bunches that you've actually got there. I'm just going to go on to the last part, and this just is a little bit of accounting, really. If you take that bunch of beetroot is worth £1.25, then the total value obviously is 78. So the value for that those bunches of beetroot, the 10 bunches of beetroot that we've got to sell from that lot this week, is £13. So by the end of the spreadsheet, you can now start to work out exactly how much veg you've got in the garden, and hopefully how much money you're going to make by selling it. I'm going to just shoot back to the beginning of this. Right, go back to the beginning. So obviously we're going to keep adding lines and lines and lines. Now, if I can just move this out of my way at the bottom of the screen. Hide that. Right, I'm going to change this spreadsheet to a different one, which has got a lot of detail in. Now, bear in mind, this is 2000. This is the one I've taken here is 2017. I may have changed things. I may have added things. Not every figure is going to be perfect. Let me just get rid of that other one out of the way. Right. So, sorry, that's the one we want. Right. Minimize that one out of the way. Right. So, we've now got a spreadsheet here that starts to put in the whole garden. And you can see I've added all those beetroot, and then we've gone down through all of the crops that in that particular season we wanted to plant. There's a lot of information here, but a lot of this is cut and paste. It might be the different types of cabbage. If you look in this area here, the spacing is going to be different for different types of cabbage, whether they're large cabbage, they're drumhead, or whatever they are. And you can work it down through. The other thing that we use quite a lot of here is obviously successional sowing. Now, that might be for salad, or it might be for salad onions. Cabbages are going in, and really I've split them on some of these into two different sowings. It's not really successional sowing. It's one to make life a little bit simpler so that not everything has to be done in 1 week, but also to give us a slightly later crop. It's not really what I'd consider. Once you get down to the Calabrese, now we're starting to look at proper successional sowing. I mentioned about that. So originally it's all modules, but as we come on now, obviously we've got some direct. So when we get to the direct area, you'll see that in this area here, this is obviously carrots flyaway we're looking at. Successional sowing is going to be every 4 weeks. So for this thing, sowing is going to be the same week as planting. So that when we go to the next columns, it'll be in both. It'll be in the right area of timing for planting. Right. The other thing I keep thinking of, what this makes me do every year is sit back and think, what worked, what didn't work, what quantities we need. And the other thing about this tool is obviously, so let's look at Calabrese Kabuki that's there. We were planting 44, 44, 44 through the week. So I know exactly how many seeds we need of that particular one. I do have a couple of other pages in here because I know this is all getting, there's a lot of numbers in this. So I've got another page here which gives me the week numbers so I can quickly look and see which week we're in. I have copied from one of the sites how many seeds per gram, because it's always handy when you're ordering. So I can look through this and think how many seeds that I need. And I've got a little spreadsheet of the seed stock. I don't want to overcomplicate this for everybody, but you can see here, if we look at the beetroot line that I've got the cursor on, 10 grams was equivalent to 800 seeds. I know I need 800 seeds for that year. We've got nothing left in stock. Something else, we might have a load left in stock that we can keep for next year. Let's go back to that program. Right, I hope this is all working. I'm just going a little bit further down. So, you know, I was also able to sort of, right, we got to the climbing beans. Climbing beans Cobra worked well, and we decided to scrap the Blue Lake, but I just wanted to leave it in the program so I can look at that at the end of the year. So I highlighted that in red for myself to know that we're not planting that one. The dwarf beans is a great example of the successional sowing. We were planting 3 varieties that particular year, and you can see that the week numbers, that was every 3 weeks, all 3 varieties. Again, salad onions, a lot of successional sowing. I'm going to go down, move back down now to the other areas of this particular one. Now, I haven't color coded this one, so you can see there's a propagation page which you can print off so you can take to the glass house or wherever, and you know what you're sowing. You've got a planting page. So again, you've got an idea of each week. Now, we do a lot of, on this one, I always do a lot of data sorting. I'm sure some of you know exactly what I mean, but if you go to the data column, you can start, I don't know if it's going to do it on this, you can start sorting data. I'm not going to get into that, just in case it freezes up on this, but I can sort this whole page into numerical order for the weeks of planting or the weeks of sowing, and it will give me everything that I need to do in order. I've got a little chunk of it here, if this will come up. Yes, so that's week 21. So I've data sorted, and I know that on week 21 that year, I needed to sow that number of cabbage. I needed to know that we need to start drilling in the swede that we were sowing. So we were sowing, what, 666 swede directly into the ground. I've also got some watercress growing in that week, herbs. And then week 22, obviously, there's an awful lot more. Now, if we'd have gone back to weeks 15, 16, 17, they would have been considerably bigger than that. It's quite late in the season by that point. But I was just going to go now a little bit further along and just show you, you've got harvesting weeks, but in terms of working out what we've got and what we're going to do with it, that was the other thing that is, and you can see now here. So we've got the numbers each week on all these crops. And we've actually got some figures. And obviously we can go down this page and really start to work out how much money we're making and whether we're making enough. The big estimate, this one here is marketable percentage. I know I put 100% in on that. I can't even remember what it is. Okay, so it's dwarf beans. Every plant we plant with dwarf beans pretty much is going to produce beans. Which is why I've just put 100% on that. But there will be crops that don't. I'm just going to carry on down a little bit more to show you that I've also done. So there's a lot of successional sowing there, 3 varieties of radish. And I think in my notes column, I've done 3 meters of each until they're gone. In other words, until we've run out in the seed cabinet. I've got a page here for my glasshouse sowing. It's not successional sowing. This has just been to make life a little bit easier. And in case we get any losses, I can get a few in nice and early. So week 6, that's middle of February. But we're still sowing tomatoes well into week 18. And those will be extras to fill up the polytunnel and things. We did in those days do quite a lot of salad. So I was sowing mixed salad. I was sowing 7 trays, and it's every 3 weeks. Right, I'm not going to keep labouring this. You can see we were doing quite a lot of different things. And then I've got a lot of herbs, pot herbs that we were sowing. Just want to quickly go and cover the points now. We were talking about crop rotations. So I'm going to jump to a plan. Right, hopefully that's come up okay. A bit of colour is always great. Colour is easier to understand than numbers. So this is the 8 beds. A to H are the main 8 beds on the garden. There are beds surrounding the outside, but they're irrelevant for this. Certain things are stuck here. So the polytunnel obviously isn't moving. The fruit area, that's all soft fruit. That's actually on the wrong side of the bed on this occasion, but it doesn't matter. We have a great big frame for our runner beans and climbing French beans that never moves. We don't need to worry about beans. The 3 main crops that we really need to be concerned about with crop rotation: alliums, brassicas, and the spuds. Yes, if you can move the carrots and parsnips around, well, that's a great advantage. But a lot of these other crops, they're not really part of the rotation. They're something that you're going to be putting there when things aren't in that particular area. So I tend to work on where the rotation is going for the alliums, where the rotation is going for the potatoes, and where the brassicas are going each year. I filled in a green manure. So that bed was under green manure for the whole of that season. And obviously at this point here, I'd still got areas that I needed to plan. So while we're staying on the colour theme, so then what I've done, I've planned that on each bed. Just bring that down a fraction. Okay, so let's look at bed A. The alliums were last in that bed 2014. So I know in 2018, I've got 4 years clear. I could think about putting the alliums in. Bed B, the alliums were in 2013. The A and B was basically, these beds are so big that I was dividing them in half, calling the left-hand side A, the right-hand side B, because we didn't always fill a whole bed. But you can see here that it just makes life so much easier when I want to plan. I'm sitting down in November, December thinking, right, which bed are the potatoes going in this year? Well, there've been no spuds in those 2 beds at all. This is the one with the polytunnel in, so there's not enough room. There's a beam frame down that one, but I could put the spuds in that bed there. I've probably deleted some previous colours. There may have been potatoes in there in 2012, in which case, by the time I'm planning 2018, don't need to worry about it. I just always found this to be really, really useful, and to get my head around what needs to go into which bed, and basically to spread it all around. I think really I've covered just about everything on it. I've gone through that Excel spreadsheet quite quickly. I can't stress enough how much of a thinking tool this is, as well as a planning tool, in that I can then go back and look each year. I did actually plan the cabbages this particular year as to which cabbage would harvest at which particular period. So there was sowing and there was harvesting. This has been copied from another site. And then I could work out which cabbages we wanted to use, which worked. I know that certainly in terms of salad onions, we tried different ones each time. We have a big problem with carrots in our walled garden. It has a bit of a soil issue with carrots. So we were constantly trying different ones, but I can look back and think, okay, that worked really well. That didn't. Perhaps we need to try Blue Lake next year. The cobras weren't as good. It's as much a thinking tool and planning for both aspects. I think unless I can't see the screen in terms of whether we've got any questions or anything. I don't know if there's. I'll bring that back up. Are there any questions or anything coming up on there, Sarah?
There's no questions in the chat box. Does anybody want to ask Phil a question directly?
No, definitely silence. Okay, well, if anybody wants a chunk of this spreadsheet to have a look at for themselves, then you're more than welcome. Just contact Sarah, and we'll sort something out. I'm going to stop sharing this screen then, Sarah, and hand it back to you.
Thanks, Phil. There you go. Matt would love to get a copy of the spreadsheet, if that's possible. Yeah, that's fine. That we can. I think Phil's going to give a copy to Tuvi. I don't know if it'll go as part of the Knowledge Hub or it can be sent out directly to participants. Don't know.
I think we'll probably do both. That's fine. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if there's yeah, fine, Rosa, we'll get it sent out to everybody. I know it's quite difficult to explain spreadsheets, isn't it, through this kind of forum, but hopefully it gives you an idea about what kind of thing you might be able to use going forward. And you can make it as complicated or as simple as you want according to your own needs, I guess. So I know that Graeme's got a spreadsheet too. So and I'm sure it'll be slightly different, which is great. So I'm going to pass over to you, Graeme. Thanks.
Hi everyone. I've got a few slides that I'll give a little overview of the farm and how the veg fits into what we do on the farm. I think I really love Phil's spreadsheet, and the fact that he's got so many years going back is the best thing, because I think the experience I've got isn't as deep as Phil's, and it's not that deep at all. We've only been doing veg for 5 years, and what's really annoying is that sheet's available from someone, and we've probably invented 5 different sheets for every single year. We've invented 5 different sets of spreadsheets, and you know, having a tool like that is what we've kind of always aspired to do. So I would really love a copy of Phil's spreadsheet to see how far off we are on our spreadsheet. But if we flick on to the next slide, I'll just give a quick overview of the farm. So we're in the Vale of Glamorgan, which is 30 degrees all the time here, taking a sample of one day. we've got 700 acres overlooking the sea. So we'll look out onto the sort of Bristol Channel, heading out to the Atlantic, which is quite fun. We're mixed enterprise, so we've got 600 ewes. So we don't do veg after Christmas because pretty much, as well as being a butcher and a market gardener, I'm pretty much the night lammer for 600 ewes in February and March. So we don't really have the time to do the veg through the winter months, which I'm not that fussed about, to be honest, because the carrots and spuds out of the soil in February is not that much fun. We've got 50 cows and 90 hectares of arable. So at the interesting point where we get to the rotation is that we've been on the farm in the last two generations of my wife's family since '79. So there's a sort of history of 20 years, certainly, of organic farming on the land, where we've been doing arable rotations. So we've got that kind of history. We've got retail butchery, and we've got market garden that we set up 5 years ago, and farm tours. So at the moment we've got a community supported agriculture scheme for 58 shares. That's gone up in the last year from probably about I think this time last year was about 32 shares. So we're going up the way all the time. And I've just done my meat box deliveries for the month, and we do about 25 to 30 bags of veg with our meat box deliveries. And then on a Saturday and a Thursday, we open the shop and the villagers come up and they buy veg from the farm shop. So our veg season is sort of middle of June to middle of December. That's what we do. So we flick on to the next slide. I say we started veg 5 years ago, and we started on a very small scale. So we were doing probably a quarter of an acre, literally a quarter of an acre of veg for 10 or 11 people in the village. One of the benefits of having a 700-acre farm is that having read around rotations and things, I knew I couldn't have spuds in the same place. You couldn't have spuds in the same place. So I've got the space to move the spuds around. So when I get into the veg, I kind of cheat a bit because I've always got somewhere I can nick to put the spuds, which is really helpful because it means I don't really have to get confused about where my spuds are going. I'm grabbing bits of ground. So I've got two bits of ground. One's about 0.8 of an acre, and then I've got a nice field which is about 2.5 acres, which I'm using probably about a third of it at the moment. And they're two different sites in terms of their in terms of the soil, in terms of fertility. So we've got a really nice sandy silt loam, which hadn't been used for probably 20 years, that we've put veg into. And then we've had an area that was actually a pig paddock for about five to 10 years, and we've put veg in there. So very different sites in terms of soil structure and so on. So that's been interesting. The pH is different. We've had to lime the more recent one, the sandy silt loam, but they've got good organic matter because we've not really been pulling anything out of them. And in terms of how we rotate round, I've sort of self-taught myself from books over the last sort of 5 years, and I've done different rotations at different times, and I've always tried to do a rotation because it's in the sort of DNA of the farm, and it's actually we're audited by OF&G. So one of the first questions when they come to see us is, what's your rotation? So we've always had to have a rotation. So even on the quarter acre, with just a few 10 beds, I had this complicated rotation where I was moving 5 different, I think it's six in the first year. I was thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to move 5 or 6 times round about this rotation. It's what we say in the book. It's just the business. But when you're one person doing it and you're out there on your own, and it's all kicking off, it gets complicated, it gets difficult. And as we've grown and we've taken on new ground, the most important thing about the rotation for us, and it was really interesting hearing Phil saying that actually what you need to concentrate on is the onions and the brassicas, because actually that's my experience as well. From wherever we've had problems, that's where the problems come from. But the most important thing about the rotation for this operation, which is understaffed and always struggling, is to make it as simple as possible. And that's what we've tried to do in the latest iteration of moving up into a bigger market share, if you like. And we've now standardized all the beds so that we've got 20-meter beds. We've got 3 blocks of 8 times 20-meter beds. That's our current ground. We're growing on all of that, but we can make it more efficient. We could certainly do more rotational sowings, and if I can get Phil's spreadsheet, I might be better actually making some of those happen. So there is scope within those 4 blocks to actually increase the volume of the business that we're doing. But it's those 4 blocks that actually form the rotation, and actually make it possible for us to just do things quite simply. So if you nip on to the next slide, the rotation is as it says there, nothing complicated, and it's literally, my spreadsheet is taken from, I think it's a Canadian Organic Growers, was about 2 or 3 years ago. They've got a really nice PDF where they tell you all about starting from scratch and building a spreadsheet, which Phil's already got. But build that spreadsheet and just get it into a space where you're working through what you need, when you need it, and how you need it. So on that spreadsheet, which we've had set up for 2 years, we're just literally moving round the blocks. That's what we're doing each year. So we know that we've got those 3 times 8 times 20-meter beds, just in a slightly different position. We do. I mean, I say I'm fairly recent to this. So how do you get into all this stuff? You look for books. I like lots of books. Elliot Coleman's really good book, and you watch all the stuff on YouTube. Really like Charles Dowding's, big fan of Charles Dowding and Richard Perkins. But both of them they're really into this no-dig stuff, and they go, well, actually, hang the rotations, don't like the rotations. And I kind of resist the guru bit of that, because there's a kind of, I'm a guru, I can just go against all the received wisdom. And I kind of think part of it is that doing rotations is really quite difficult. It's you've got to sit down in November. You literally got to sit down in November, think it through, and work out where you're going to get to with it. If you can suddenly look back at 25 years and go, that didn't really make a difference, then I can give up and not do rotations anymore. Then that's fine. But I don't have 25 years of doing non-rotation growing, so I don't really want to feel that, because I think actually doing the work on it is quite important. And I've got sort of recent experience of where not doing a rotation might be a bad idea. But in terms of in that rotation, how we build fertility, we do have the luxury of a big pile of muck from the sheep and the cows, so we're able to put some of that on the beds, and we also get a little bit of green waste. And then where we can, and I say it's where we can because in our spreadsheet we are putting on cover crops on lots of different beds at lots of different times of the year. But sometimes when we get to November and look back on what we've done, we haven't got to the cover crops, and actually the cover crop is just a big pile of weeds. But that, for me, that does something in itself. If you click onto the next sheet, you can have a little look at my spreadsheet. I'm not very good at Zoom, so I'm not very good at sharing screens and stuff. So this is all you're getting. And anyway, Phil's is much better. Don't worry about it. It's his is the business. But basically, we are doing a very similar thing. We start at the start of the year. We've got 60 bags. That was our aim this year. We've got 58. We wanted 60 bags. We thought, what is it that we need to plant in a bed of beetroot? You know, how many beets do we need to get in modules, and how do we go? We built in a 30% failure rate. You fill a 25% in there. We put a third in. Perhaps we've been overly pessimistic. Certainly, we were overly pessimistic on broad beans and snap peas this year, and tomatoes. We've got a bountiful supply of those. Squash looks rubbish this year for us, and calabrese was always a bit of a struggle to get enough to fill the bags. So actually, when we sit down and look at the spreadsheet, we might have to have a think about where we find that space. But what that does mean is, if we did go for 60 next year, when we look at that block that had the legumes in it, we've now got probably too much broad beans and too much snap peas. So we've got bed space in there that we can be flexible about. Maybe we think about building fertility in those beds. Maybe we do something else. So yeah, it's the spreadsheet's helpful for us. I think any tool like that you can get hold of and you can make your own, I think that's the important bit of it. I think you've got to actually get hold of it and own it. It won't do anything unless you actually get into the data of it, unless you actually feel those, the bulb fennel that just didn't happen. You've got to understand where that fits in the in that spreadsheet so that you can use it. If we flick on to the next one, my pests and diseases, this is a bit sad, really. We've got 2 weeks ago we had 5,000 really nice dried onions in the shed, and then this week we've got maybe 3,000 of them are starting to rot at the neck because I've bought a load of sets in. It's really humid here, and I've got neck rot going on in my onions. So I from a really practical point on my block rotation, I know I'm not anywhere near where those onions were for 4 years. There's no, hopefully the spores have dissipated, and that any sort of issue, I'm protecting myself against by spinning around the rotations. And I have totally gone against the rotation at various points when I've just had to steal a bed because I've not been able to get one clean enough. And if you remember the really hot 2018, really hot summer, stuck in some brassicas, where brassicas ended up there the next year as well, and they got really attacked by flea beetle, and I let them stay there all winter, pulled them out, put brassicas next to them where they'd been the next year, and had really bad flea beetle on them straight away. So for just in 5 years of not following the rules sometimes, and maybe making poor decisions about buying in onion sets, I'm actually finding that my rotation really helps to it's giving me lessons. It's giving me ways of getting round mistakes, and sort of helping for planning for future years. I don't know if I've taken my full 20 minutes here, Debs. I'm not drying up. I'm quite happy to spraff on and give people all sorts of nonsense, but maybe a conversation is helpful at that stage.
Anyone got any questions for Graeme or for Phil at this point about planning or rotations or spreadsheets or colour coding?
Oh, yeah, I have. Hi, Graeme. We're just down the road from you. In fact, we go to the milk hut to get our milk, so go past you every day. We do no dig. I know Charles quite well. And I wonder, because this year we've done an experiment. Last year we had curly kale in one bed, and this year we put brassicas in there, and they're doing okay. They're they are doing okay. So I'm not going to carry on doing brassicas in that bed, but it's just interesting when you talk about the perceived wisdom of rotation, whether or not, because when you, for example, when you do in the winter mustards for salad bags, which is what we specialize in, they're brassicas as well. So it's like Graeme says, it is really difficult to know, because you tend to put those salads you're growing for winter where something's just come out, and it might be cauliflower or something. So yeah, I find it an interesting subject. I do try and do exactly what Phil says, and I have a color-coded plan of all our beds, and I try and every November I try and plan it, but it doesn't always work. I'm interested in your potatoes, Graeme. Do they get a lot of scab because we've got high pH here?
It depends where I put them. So this year they've come up lovely. So, but then I've stuck them in the sandy silty loam, which has got quite a low pH, and they've come up really nice. But I've had them in a sort of big thick clay sort of place down the back, and we've had really bad scab at times. So I think it's your luck, really. Yeah,
I agree. Anyway, it's quite interesting listening to everybody talk, because I don't know what other people's experience is. We've been doing it for about 8 years now.
I think, Graeme, you talk with your problems with the onions. We're in a wall garden it was used from about 1800 for growing veg, and probably was the last people to really seriously grow veg in it with the land army. So you can say that it hasn't been used for growing veg from about the 1950s right through until we started growing veg, because it had been Christmas trees, it had been pheasant pens all through the 20th century, late 20th century, right through until really 10 years ago. The first time we planted any alliums, the first lot I put in here, I was here as part of the project, and we got some garlic sets, some garlic bulbs, and we put the garlic bulbs in, and they got white rot. Now, all of the organic books that I studied organic production, and all of the organic Bibles that you read will tell you crop rotations, leave the ground. If you've got a problem like that, leave it for 20 years. We can't grow onions for storage in this garden under any circumstances at all, because they will always, doesn't matter where we put them, we tried all over the garden, they always get white rot. So they just will not keep. And talking to the agronomists about this, they're saying it's a little bit like rose sickness. Once you've got that sort of microbial fungal problem, it's there. You're not going to get rid of it. You know, you get a rose sickness problem in a rose garden, or any of that family. You've got to move on. There are fruit growers who've grown. I'm thinking of some that we all know of. They've grown strawberries in the ground in fields, and they've broken it up, but they've done it year on year over a period of 100 years, and those fields now will not grow strawberries anymore. So at least by doing the rotations, hopefully on a 4 or 5 year cycle, you're giving a little chance for those diseases not to build up. And I think it is about building them up.
I mean, I think I think the lesson for us will be just that. I think we'll grow onions so that we've got them ready to go in the summer, and then we'll grow onions at the end of the summer, so that we're never kind of really storing them beyond a few weeks. I think that's kind of what our thinking is at the moment.
I find that growing onions by seed, you get less problems and sets.
Yeah, we experimented with both of those, Ali, really, and yes, if it's fast growing, if it's salad onions, we were getting away with it. But if it was anything that was going into the end of the season, 50% of the crop we lifted up, and it had got white rot underneath it. And I did try. I mean, we initially grew from seeds, and then we went for sets to try and get them through quicker. Eventually, they still got it. It's a problem. But of course, when we're talking about rotations, then the big problem comes, especially when you're talking about salad crops. How do you rotate in a polytunnel? Year upon year.
Just swap sides.
Well, I know, but there's only so many sides. And
Yeah, but I put loads of compost on every year.
yeah.
So they've got very shallow roots, so they're probably just in the new compost, so I don't worry about it.
And I think healthy plants are not going to be as susceptible as weaker plants. And so I think, the better your growing techniques and the better your soil and plant husbandry is, then the more chance you've got of avoiding these things.
Yeah. Well, we've got a fantastic crop of tomatoes this year, and they're all growing in exactly the same space as they were last year.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we've got 2 tunnels, and we just switch it around, and that's all we can do is just bank. There's nothing. We're not going to build another tunnel at the moment. So
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yes.
Any other questions for Phil or for Graeme? Thanks for that, Ali. I know there's a few of you growing no dig actually, so it'll be interesting to see how those enterprises go forward, won't it? Okay, well, if there's no further questions, then I think we'll call an end to the session. It'll be on the Knowledge Hub, and do keep an eye on the What's On page of the Tyfu Cymru website, because it will tell you what's coming up next. If there's any questions that you're burning for you that you think after we've gone, then you know that you can just either contact Evie or me, and we can put you in touch with Graeme, or with, if that's okay, with Phil, if it's about some of your what you do in particular. We'll get those spreadsheets. Can we, what about yours, Graeme? Can we use your spreadsheet too? Yeah, so you're on mute, but I'm assuming that was a yes.
yes.
Thank you. So we'll make those available. And again, if you've got any queries from those, just please get in touch. If you've got any ideas for future sessions, then please do let me know, because obviously we want it to be led by yourselves. So we want to put things on that you want to see. Sarah has put in the chat that we're looking at putting on a session on Excel and how to create a spreadsheet. So that might be of interest actually as a follow on from this session. And we'll let you know about that. Thanks, Lauren. Glad that was helpful to you going forward. And we'll look forward to seeing you all very soon. You can all go and have your dinner now.
Yeah. Sarah, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.